chance. Now, developer wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. Thank you, Black Marble, for organizing this, but also thank you to Microsoft, Sage, Grey Matter, NDC, London, Landmark, IO, and the University of Hull. Thank you for making this possible, and thank you for supporting these events. And of course, it wouldn't be a virtual event if we wouldn't make it social. Hashtag DDD 2020 and @Developer Day are the ones that you want to hook up to in Twitter. And if you want to tweet about my session, my Twitter handle is @dichmike.2kx. You can mention me anytime. So let's go over to the order of the day. I'm going to talk to you about Visual Studio Code and Azure, a match made in heaven. Now the goal, maybe a little bit of information on my side. I am Mike Martin. I'm a Belgian cloud solution architect and technical evangelist for Microsoft Belgium. I used to work on Western Europe, but that changed during the summer. I am a former known Azure MVP. I still run a user group in Belgium, which is called the Azure, which is organizing events on Azure. So you can also join on these, and maybe we can do something together with DDD one day. Let's hope for. If you want to reach out, there's my email address. You can have a Twitter QR code that you can use to mention me, and @dichmike2k, as I already mentioned. Now let's talk a little bit about this VS Code thing. You probably all know this, but I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that you can use to manage your Azure assets a little bit better with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code is a highly respectful Electron application. So that means that it can run anywhere. It runs on Windows, Linux, and Mac. It's fully open source. And since it's not completely like Visual Studio, its power comes from the extensions that we have and all the little features that we built in over the years. So we can use many resources at its bottom. Yeah. Of course, what would a code IDE be without good Intellisense support for many languages and scripts? So we also have that. And as I mentioned, it's customizable and extensible. So this thing can really be your lightweight one-stop shop for managing your Azure environments. I know most of the Azure developers and Azure infrastructure people, because this is not only for developers, are struggling today with how they better can manage their code assets like infrastructure as code or just their ASP.NET applications or whatever. And we all know that we should be striving for CI/CD, but from an asset management perspective, and you don't want to do something specifically inside of the portal, or you want to do a CLI, this IDE can actually help you maintain some of these things. Now, as I mentioned, there's many extensions, and you can create your own extensions. Yeah? So you can actually install a lot of them just by using the extensions stored. So what I'm first going to show you is, if we look at the Visual Studio Code, there's the entire extension store that you can actually run. You can just, and for Azure, you actually need one to start off, which is called the Azure Tools. It's this one, and it contains all the base tools that you need to manage your basic Azure assets that you have and Azure resources that you have. Now there's plenty more that you have, and you can install them all side by side, and they will nicely line up either into the tab bar or in a specific parts inside of your VS Code. As I mentioned, it's multi-platform. As I mentioned, it's multi-platform. It's everywhere the same application. And you can even have this in an insiders build. So for those who are using Windows Insiders, there's also a Visual Studio Code Insider. So if you want to do the latest nightly build of Visual Studio Code, you can actually use that one. It works exactly the same way. The only thing is that it is less stable, and it has a green icon instead of a bluish purple one. So maybe I could also interest you in a little bit of the history of Visual Studio Code. Now, since I mentioned that this session is called VS Code and Azure, a match made in heaven, there's a definite link with Azure, which is bigger than you think. The cool thing is, that in the past there was a small project going on within Microsoft, which was called Project Monaco, Meet Monday Monaco, because of the abating place in France. And Monaco is actually something that you can run yourself. It's something that you can download and you can implement inside of your web applications. And you can download it from the GitHub account on Microsoft under the repo Monaco editor. What you can actually do with it, I'm going to show you that there's actually proof that Visual Studio and and Monaco have a link. So Monaco and Azure is actually the grandfather or the father of Visual Studio Code. So if you go into Visual Studio Code itself and we take a look at the developer tools, you will actually see that this is an Electron app and that it is using some JavaScript and all these things. And there's Bootstrap.js, there's Bootstrap Windows.js, and there used to be a Monaco Windows.js. Let me just go open in this one. Just use this one and here's a new file. That will be probably better to take a look at. It's not longer doing it. Yeah, here we have Monaco Workbench. So as you can see, it's still using the same Monaco Workbench files. If we go into a browser and we go to our Azure environment and we open up an Azure service editor. So for those who don't know that, there's in Azure Web Apps, there's this thing called Azure App Service Editor. And you can reach this by either going to the app service itself, and you scroll down and you see development tools, and there's this little link called App Service Editor. And it's actually an extension on top of the Kudu tools that you have. So that's something that we injected there a long time ago. So what we can do here is we can actually say, I want to click on this one. You get this little link here showing, yeah, and then it will open up the site. But there's an easier way of doing it if you don't want to always go to the portal and stuff. If you go to our website, you will see that there's an Azure Websites URL that has been generated. We can actually use this Kudu extension URL for that, which we then add SCM in between. Then we go to dev, and this will actually be our landing zone for App Service Editor. And as you can see, this will open up very nicely. The second inside of this, you will see that this is very recognizable. You have this entire VS Code, a little bit more lightweight, but you see the exact same structure with a little bit more different buttons. And I can just open up any kind of file, and I have the same support as I would have with Intellisense and all these things. So you can, color coding and all these things. I can even do some previewing. So if I just want to open this up, I can actually do some previewing on the side. Pretty cool stuff that you have. Now, the beauty of this all, if we now take a look at the developer extensions, I can open this thing up. You will actually see that this thing still uses the same Monaco shell, the same kind of structured views that it has, and still the Monaco model behind it. And it should be the same ones as we have today in Visual Studio Code on the laptop or on the PC that we have. Pretty cool stuff. Now, we wouldn't be evolving if we wouldn't be revolving too. Now, the last couple of months, we had something new coming up from Visual Studio, which was called Code Spaces. Now, this was totally being integrated in GitHub since September. We integrated that fully there, and this is where you can actually use it. And this is pretty cool because now we can fully run Visual Studio Code inside of the browser. Use its full extent without having a PC and downloading all the tools and all the different specific things. Now, pretty cool about this thing is that we can also do this from any kind of GitHub repo. So if we open up our GitHub repo, we can just go to code. We can say open up with code spaces if you are entitled to do so. I'm still in the preview. If you get into the preview, and you just say open with code spaces, then you select the code space that you have, or you create a new one. And this opens up this little thing. Oh, I need to reconnect apparently. I got a timeout. This opens up a code space container, which is actually VS Code running inside of a container, which you can then access from there out. And now it's starting up, of course. I had it all preheated, and there we are. And the beauty of it all is that all the extensions that we have with VS Code Sync will actually also be pushed in there, and you can actually use those from all these things. And as you can see, it's the same code. It's the same kind of thing that I was opening up earlier inside of the browser, which I showed to Visual Studio App Service Editor. So it takes a while before everything is loaded, but once it is loaded, it's really fluent, really fast. And as you can see, all the extensions that I have installed locally, I can actually sync thanks to this little thing here, because my account is syncing all my extensions there too. So you can now use, let's say, for instance, if you have a beautiful Surface Go, you can use your Surface Go with an additional keyboard to just do code editing on the fly without having the need for a machine that needs backed in power that you want to build on, and so on and so on. So it's pretty cool stuff. But even from an Azure perspective, this is very nice, because you can actually run any kind of extension which is Azure related also very nicely in here, right? So what about this? As I mentioned, there's a lot of extensions that you can use. So how do we get it? I already said it. You can get the extensions through the web. There's the marketplace where you can download all the extensions. And the one thing that you should actually start looking for is the full extension for Azure called Azure Tools, which installs a 10-ish sub extensions inside of that package. It's a fully package. And one of the more important ones is the Azure account, because this will regulate everything for you. But there's another way of doing it. What if you have a team and you don't want to use code space, or you don't have access to code space? What if you have a team that you want to share all these extensions with? Well, there's one trick that I can actually show you. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, is that the Visual Studio Code also has a console interface that you can use. So if we take a look at our console, you can actually do code. You can start up code just like running that, or you can do code dot, and this will open the current directory inside of code. But you can also do this. This will actually help you understand what code is doing when you're starting it up. And there's a lot of things that you can do. You can disable extensions, you can install an extension, and you can even uninstall extensions from there. But the most important thing is, what if somebody already sets up a machine and you have all the extensions in place and you want to have exactly the same set of extensions like that person has? Well, there's one thing that I typically do, and people like to automate with things like with Chocolatey or Winget nowadays, because we also have those. What I do is I create typically a little script. So once I have a happy setup in Visual Studio Code, I just do this code and then list extensions. There's as you can see here, there's a little command here, list extensions. List extensions. This will give me the entire list of all my extensions that I have. I then output this to a file, and I just edit it in code in the long way down. So I can just do this. I'm just going to export it to SD file. Voila, go text. I just do this for a second. And I just want to do code top. I open this one. I can actually do a full edit of that file. I can close this one off. And I can just go set my live here. And normally, if I'm not mistaken, and I always keep forgetting that the shortcut key for this, but if I'm not mistaken, it should be up. It should be Control. No, it should be Control Alt. No, Control Z. Shift Alt. No, Control Z. Control Alt. Yeah, Control Alt. Gonna go all the way down. I'm just gonna start typing code -install extension, and this saved me a lot of work, because now everybody can just use that script. I just saved this as a PowerShell script or something, and now everybody can use that script to install all the different extensions that I have. No harm done. It's very easy. It just takes a couple of minutes to remember the correct shortcut key and export the extensions that you have. Pretty useful stuff. So for those who didn't know that or haven't seen it, can we make the font bigger? Yes, we can. Of what? Of the browser or of the Visual Studio Code? Oh, I think you meant the browser, right? Or is it this one? Is big enough? Right. Maybe I'll do the same for the browser in the meantime. If there's still a browser open, if there's still a browser open, here we go. That will work rather right. Sorry about that, didn't see that question. So, as I mentioned, there's other ways to do that. So you have this console commands, as I said, and I will make these slides available so you can read up on them afterwards. Code help, and as you can see, you can export and import and just do list extensions, install the extensions and use that as your extent, right? So now let's talk a little bit about what we can actually really do well with VS Code and the Azure extensions, because it's really typically about the collaboration between both of them. Right? First of all, there's static websites, and static websites come in two flavors. First of all, there's storage static websites, and there's Azure static websites. Now, Mike, what's the difference between both of them? Well, the storage static websites are actually based upon a storage account, and there's the cheapest way to run a static website. They use the power of storage, which is blindingly fast to access, and it just enables an extension on top of that, and it will open up a subfolder called web $, which then enables to expose the static website to the internet. And then you can hook up your DNS name to that, use Frontdoor in front of it, and then you have a really nice and clean cheap way of running a static website. There's another way which we announced, I think it was in September during Ignite, where we have Azure static websites, which is a sub-extension of Azure App Services, where you can have a nice integrated setting between GitHub and Azure to deploy Azure static websites. Really, really nice. The running of the websites is just still deploying those services, but you have an additional set of features in there, like integrated application insights and all these things. What I'm going to talk to you about is now really the storage one, because I found that still something which we really underestimate and we can really use to a better benefit. So if you go into our Visual Studio Code, you will see that I have here a nice clean HTML file here. We make it a little bit bigger just to make sure that everybody can read my font. And as I said, so we have this little HTML file. Now it's really the purest of all static websites. It can be a node, it can be anything after compilation, whatever. Right? Now the cool thing about it is that we have in Azure, so after the installation of the Azure tools, we have this small little feature here called Azure Storage. Now what we can do here is we can either stay in our file explorer or we can go immediately to storage. What we can do is we can right click and we can say here, and you can see that totally at the bottom, yeah, it's a long list. There is this little thing called deploy to Azure static website via Azure Storage. So if I click this one, you can select then a storage account. And for this one, I'm just going to create a new one really, really quickly so you can see that I'm actually doing it live. I'm going to do it DDD 2020. I need DDD to make it right. 2020 static live. Right? I'm just going to name it like that. It needs to be globally unique, just like any other storage account. For those who don't know, that storage accounts have a live DNS name, fully qualified DNS name, which is unique because we have one single DNS record that actually points to those. Right? So what you need to do is just enter. And this will now create a resource group for me. Just by doing it quickly, you can, of course, just easily do all these things manually and have an additional as you can see, it's creating, so that's pretty good. You can have additional advanced settings. What it will do, it will actually create a storage account, a resource group. It will enable the extension on that, and then we have actually the website live, and then it will copy all the resources into that static live website. So give it a couple of seconds. And while that is doing it, I'll just open this up a little bit more. I think I can, yeah, there we are. So it has now been created. It is now copying all the files. It won't take that long normally, or should be taking long. And there we are. It will give me a highlight of browse to the website immediately. So I can just do this. I can go browse to the website. It will open up my browser. There we go. As you can see, it created a new DNS name. And there is my site. It's exactly the same site as I deployed earlier. So if I just hello and welcome live to DDD, I can just do this. I can save this and I can redeploy this. So if I now do deploy the static website, I can just redeploy this. It will give me this one, say that folder again, and it will just delete and deploy the configuration over to the other side. So give it a couple of seconds, a couple of blobs, deleting it, adding them again. Wait for it. It has been deployed. So if I now just refresh my page, you will actually see that this has been updated. It's the easiest and the quickest way just to test static websites without having to pay a lot of money for it. It just basically costs you tea and some milk. That's it. And yeah, per month or even per year, because the storage that you use on this is really low. So the thing that it creates in the background is really nice. So in the blob container, it actually will create a web folder, $web folder. And underneath you will find all your resources. It does have a certain structure because for all your error pages, you need a error location. I typically do a folder with or a container with errors, but you can choose that actually. If once you are there, you need to point it to that storage location, and then it will be pointed out in the rerouting of the static page on the storage account. Pretty cool. You can easily just use that from here out. So as you can see, basically fingers up the nose, nothing fancy, nothing really hard. Now, static web pages is of course fun. We see them more and more, and it's like coming back from the 90s and going back over there again. So nostalgia rocking, but yeah. But then again, sometimes you just want to have some other things too, and you can basically just also use it not only to do static web apps, but other stuff, right? So sometimes you also want to have web apps natively. So we were talking about storage accounts, storage management. I know we have a lot of tools when we talk about storage accounts. We have Storage Explorer, we have Visual Studio, the full version, we have Storage Explorer now live in the portal. But even from here, we can do a lot of stuff. I can do the full Storage Explorer management, just a little bit like we do in Storage Explorer. We can also use copying the connection string, copy the primary keys. I can upload files. I can create blob containers here. So if I just open up another storage account, breaking anything, so what I can do here is this one, for instance, I can just say in blob containers, create a blob container. So all these things work. I just can do demo ddd. Voila. It creates me a container, and I can start uploading my files here. So I can just do an upload files, and everything will be here, basically very cleanly and nicely, just like you have in Storage Explorer. So it's a little bit more than just having the developer part. You can also just do your blob management. And if you combine both of them, like for instance, if you have a storage account where you want to have some assets, you want to create a nice page with images that you want to upload, or you want to do all these things with making your presentations available, for instance, you can actually use both of these in the same resource group. Have a different storage account for specifically for your PowerPoints, and have a blob container specifically for your static web pages, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do. Now, of course, as I mentioned, it's account management. You can create new ones. You can do static deployments, as I said, key management, very important. Yeah. So everything which is basically in storage, and storage is one of the basic facilities that you need in Azure. So this is really a nice tool without having to leave one single environment. Now, another one which is very nice, which is the next step up after you deploy it into static and you want some more tangible, you want actually something more controllable where you have more logging and a more interface like, and you want to have use more features of IIS, for instance, you can move into Azure Web Apps. Now, Azure Web Apps is the next version of your environment. And what we can do here is I can actually do from within the static websites, I can actually do this to a web site itself. So what I can do here, I can just right click again, deploy to a web app. Again, this will call me to a new one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new web app with some advanced settings. So what I'm going to do here is going to do DDD web app live. Just going to make it 2020. Making sure that I'm not lying to you again. So here we go. Press enter. I want to use the resource group, and for this one, I'm going to like a little bit cheat because I'm just going to reuse this resource group again. I'm going to select my runtime stack. As you can see, it's all the support that you have from the portal or from the CLI is also found here. So I'm just going to go here with Core 3.1. Why am I choosing this one? Well, it doesn't matter if it's static page. Underneath the engine, you can either choose a Linux or a Windows. For now, I'm just going to go with Windows because I love IIS for some reason. Yeah, I'm that insane. But the underlying mechanism for Windows really doesn't matter because it's a native IIS. If you're doing it in Linux, you will in Linux you will get a container that is being spun up with a different version underneath. So you need to make sure that you choose the correct one for that matter. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to just create a new service plan. I'm going to name it like this. And I'm just going to go with, let's go for a standard one or just a basic one, whatever. I just want to demonstrate that I can deploy this. I don't want to use application inside, but I can immediately create that from here. So I'm going to skip that for now. And I'm going to go with, since I created the resources in, I'm just going to go with Western Europe for now, where I'm going to deploy it. So West Europe, where is it? Maybe I can type it. That goes a little bit faster. Here we go. Select that one. Voilà. And now it's going to create me everything for me. So if you take a look in our extension again, you'll actually see that now in my app service, you will see that there's something running, going on. I can just do, just wait for it. It's going to take a couple of minutes to deploy, but to make it a little bit faster, I already deployed one earlier today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to browse the website. Just going to open it. So as you can see, I can just do all these things. Yeah? And it's the earlier created website. Of course, I deployed it earlier, so it's not going to say live. I can just do this. As you can see, it's still LLDDD. It's an earlier version from this morning. What I can do is I can just redeploy this again. I can say deploy to web app. And these sources, this static environment, are you sure you want to override? Yes, I want to do that, and deploy. And now it will start deploying in the background to that show. You can also enable it always from that specific location. You can actually do that. And as you can see, the other one is live now. So I can just go over there, browse to that website while we were waiting, open it. As you can see, I was aligned with the same source as we did before, and this one will be actually updated in any minute now. Here we go. It's also already updated at the same time. So yeah, really, really fast. So as you can see, right-click publish. Kind of nice. I know we shouldn't be doing this, but for testing things and just to make it fast from one single environment, this is really, really powerful. And you can also fiddle around with all the application settings. I'm just going to quickly zoom out a little bit on here. And as you can see, you can set with all the application settings. You immediately can set all the database things, web jobs. You can do all these things and check all the deployments that you've done, and this will give you a good overview of all the different deployments. As you can see, if you have like a GitHub repository push, you can actually do that from here too. We can actually see and check all the commits that you have and all the Git pushes that you have. Pretty nice, pretty clean. I don't know, Douglas, when the recording will be available, but I'll maybe my fearful presenter, producer Nigel can answer that. I don't know. I think they will be immediately available after the show, but I don't know. Talk to the DDD people. All right. So we had Web Apps. I can also use the extension, which is something a lot of people typically forget to do, is you can also use this to manage deployment slots. So from here I need to scale up to a production plan, of course, but you can easily deploy into one slot, deploy into another slot to do some testing, and then quickly switch it. You can also do this from here. Like, I think I can show you this one. I think this is a production ready one, and I can actually show you deployment slots. This one has that. So I can really just create a new deployment slot and just move it from there. Okay, pretty nice stuff. Slot management, as I said, there's configuration management. There's also the web jobs and deployments that you can follow up. But streaming logs is very nice because sometimes you just want to connect to the streaming logs and see what's going on in your web server to observe, to debug, to figure out some issues that are going on. Specifically useful when you're doing PHP and stuff like that. Really, really helpful. And then we have the latter one that comes along with it is functions. You can really easily use functions management from within here. You can do the same things. You can connect immediately from a GitHub repository. You can even use it to manage your functions itself and immediately hook up to the functions and start creating new functions from there out. So I can just easily do that. Take a look at functions. Here we go. I can just say, open up my subscription. You did see that my subscriptions are pre-filled. This is all to do with the Azure account login. As you can see here, this is my Azure account where I'm logged in with. You can easily select all the different subscriptions that you have, because that's very important to manage. If you go to Control-Shift-P, which is the magic button for VS Code anyway, you can just type Azure and then subscriptions. Then you will have this little select subscription thing. And if you select that, you can select all your different subscriptions that you have. And you see there's a lot. I advise you strongly that you select all the subscriptions that you're working on and not the subscriptions that you're not working on. So that way you cannot, first of all, make a mistake and push into the wrong subscription, but also it makes the loading a little bit more fast, because this can get tedious if you have a lot of subscriptions, and it will take a while to load. So as you can see, so what I can do here is I can create a new function or create a new project. So I'm just going to do quickly create a new function. Oh, as you can see, it wants me now to create a new project. So it also recognizes what kind of a function that you have or what kind of project that you're working in. So from here out, you can actually select those things. So all these things come together with it. Looks like that I don't have anything running right now. Something went wrong there. So let's skip on to the next part. And some of the features that are very nice is that you can actually test again, manage your functions in your proxy, but you also can test immediately from within Visual Studio Code and create and test against the URI that you have. So just by doing a right click, you actually get that URI back, and you can test the API that you created. Of course, it wouldn't be Visual Studio Code if you didn't have any good support for command lines. And if you're doing, like, for instance, let's say Bash Azure deployments, or if you're doing like PowerShell deployments with ARM templates, for instance, you actually can use Visual Studio Code to just not only use it as a PowerShell or a Bash editor. And the cool thing about this thing here is that you also have, if I just open up my correct Visual Studio Code here, where is it? That's not that one. I think I closed it. Yeah, I have too many things. I can just do this one then. If I just go here, just create a new file, I can actually say as a deploy, for instance, and I'm just going to call this AZCLI. This AZCLI, you it has a specific extension, as you can see, and it immediately recognizes it. Let me just zoom in a little bit on this thing. Oh, we cannot see it anymore, darn it. That's a pity. Let me just do it differently then. Oh. Oh. This will work better. No, it's not reacting. I wanted to zoom in. Oh, yeah, it's still doing something. Yeah, there we are. So, where are we? Come on. Mouse support. Come on, mouse support. There we go. So if I now do, yeah, there we are. As you can see here, you have the selection of changing the type of file that you're working in, and this will recognize immediately as an Azure CLI scrapbook. What this will do is this will give you language support for AZ. So this is really, really cool. So if I now do this and I just do AZ in space and I just do a Control Escape and I just say account, for instance, it will give me a full Intellisense on all the different aspects of AZ, and it will help me write my scripts better. I can just do a clear, I can do a set, I can do a show. This is for my account, but if I were to say it, let's say to VM, for instance, I can actually just do this, and it will let me help to create disks, boot diagnostics, and all the things that you can do in the CLI. But now you have Intellisense, and it can actually show you a little bit better how things work and make it you understand. Now, unfortunately, I wanted to show another thing, which was really, really nice, but there's something broken in my environment, so it seems. So I'm just going to quickly go back. So scripting fully Intellisense, as I mentioned, code even works in Cloud Shell. And that's the thing that I wanted to show also, Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell is something that you can open from within Visuals. From within the portal. For those who don't know it, it's a shell that is actually being hosted in Azure, and where you have access into a container where you can run bash scripts and PowerShell scripts. And it has native support in Visual Studio Code, as you can see, with the extension of the Azure tools. Now, the downside is that for me, it doesn't seem to be working, but because for some reason, it's waiting for the directory and it doesn't get the feedback back. So I don't know what's going on there. I think there's something wrong with my profile. But I am going to show you that Visual Studio Code is also integrated in that on that kind of a level. So if we go back to our browser, we open up the portal, you will actually see that there's a little button here called the Cloud Shell. So if I zoom in a little bit here, this will open up the, just make it a little bit bigger for you guys so they can read. There we go. So this will make the Cloud Shell appear. So this is Cloud Shell for you. So it looks like a normal terminal, so I can just do anything. Yeah. It's a little bit slowing down now. I can do anything here. I can just start typing and make it a little bit bigger. But what I can also do, and this is pretty cool, if I do this, and now the browser is not responding anymore. Come on. For some reason, it is now slowing down my PC for some reason. Just already close this one. Don't save. Apply. That brings back some memory to my machine normally. So if I now do, no, okay. Let's restart this for a second. Starting my Cloud Shell, maybe add a timeout. That's what you get. You prepare everything. You want to set everything up, and sometimes it's just logs down everything. Give it a second. Starting the Cloud Shell. Come on, come on, come on, come on. There we go. Connecting, come on. Give it a couple of minutes. Luckily, this is one of my ladder demos, so we're almost there. We're gonna end up in time. Still got about 5 minutes, so all will be fine. All right, that is running because it takes a little bit too long. Let me go over it. So as I said, code even works in Cloud Shell. I want to demonstrate you. You actually have the same coding editor experience, a little bit less, a little bit more lightweight though, but you have Intellisense and just a file explorer from Cloud Shell too. So that way you can manage your CLI scripts that you created specifically for deploying Azure from Cloud Shell or from your Visual Studio Code editor, and you can upload them from there, and then you can start working on that. We also have this is kind of like it looks like. So what you get is a terminal. I created this one specifically for myself, and if you then go immediately into I think you can also use the CLI support from the terminal there, as I showed you. And this is the thing that I was talking about. So you even have an AZ interactive method that you can just call from there. That also works in the CLI and the normal CLI too. So that can work from there too. So maybe let's see if you're there now. Yeah, maybe if I just switch to batch, that it goes a little bit faster. Hopefully it does. Sometimes a Linux containers is way faster than it's establishing a secure connection. Almost there. Yeah, here we go. This is way better. So let me just demonstrate it by this. So I can do an ls here. I can say cd cloud drive. There we go. And if I now do a code here, this will actually share. You see it? You see how fast that was? And all of a sudden it works fast. I have this demo HTML file here. What I can do now is I can just do this. And it recognizes immediately that it is an HTML file, so it knows the Intellisense syntax. And this is actually something which is pretty darn far-fetched because people don't realize that it is existing. And this is really, really good if you want to have some code management from the same portal. You want to have some support for AZCLR and stuff like that. This will really, really work. You can even save the file from here. Right? You can close the editor, open a file, and even have a command palette that you can open, just like you have anything like you have in Visual Studio Code IDE. Pretty cool, right? So you can just use this also as a cloud editor. And people didn't realize that it was there all the time. Well hidden secret, a real nice secret to be saving too. So some other cool things that you can do is, of course, database management. As developers, we also talk to data a lot, and there's a lot of support that you have today for SQL databases. We have extensions for SQL Server. It's the same extension that we're using natively in Azure Data Studio, and it has some nice nifty features in there. I'm going to show you in a second. We also have support for the Postgres immediately from there out, and of course for Cosmos DB, which is really, really nice. So let me just quickly jump into that. So I have a query already here. As you can see, I have the database part, but I also have this extension here called SQL Server, and that's the other one that you need. So that's the native extension that I was talking about that we also use inside of Azure Data Studio. So if I do a Control-Shift-P and I want to connect my database, I can normally do, I thought I saved that one, but no, okay. SQL, I can do add a connection. There we go. And I'm going to go quickly over to my portal again. I have a SQL here. Oh, I have a SQL database here. I just need a connection string. So what I'm going to do here is quickly load this one. Come on, there we go. I'm just going to go open this one here and copy the database link. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just paste this in here, press enter. I'm not going to go to a direct database. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to use SQL login, but you can easily now use AAD. I'm going to log in with my username, which is called Ikke, which is me in Dutch, by the way. I'm just going to do give my password very secure. I want to save my password. Yeah, demo DDD. There we go. And now it's not going to connect me to my environment. Oh, it seems that I mistyped my password for some reason. I thought I already had. Can I just refresh my connections here? No. That's weird. I thought I had it open earlier. Let's do that again. So Control-Shift-B. MSC connect. Let's try that again. I'm just gonna I still have it here for the previous one. Let's just do this one. Oh, cannot set access to. Oh, come on. And then demo fails, right? So let's do that again. Retry. Yeah. I use this one, and I'm just gonna do. Maybe I just mistyped my password. No, this is weird. Okay, so believe take it from me. But the cool thing is, if you do a database connection, this can actually help you if you just do a select of a table or whatever query you want to run. You can actually immediately export this to CSV or JSON and just use that string again to play around with it. So I'm just messing up here because something is wrong with my password. Maybe it's because I'm rushing. So what else can you do? Well, some of the new features that we have today is the nice support for other things. And one of the other things that I do want to show you really quickly is the use of, so you have IoT, you have VMs, data lake, and all the things. But one of the other things that I want to show you is quickly go over the support for Docker and Kubernetes containers, which is really nice. So you can immediately see that I have a good connection to my registries, and from here out I can actually push all the images that I have locally immediately, let's say, to my registries that I have in Azure. So this could be any of the container registries that I have in Azure. I also have, and as you can see, you just need the native Docker extension for that. I also have a Kubernetes extension for this, where you can have an additional extension that you can immediately connect to Azure. From here, you can actually dive into kubectl, run AKS diagnostic, but also configure CI/CD workflows and browse your CI/CD workflows from here out. So you can set up a Git flow ops. Now, the last extension that I want to talk to you about, which is a really lifesaver when you're doing Azure, is Ben Coleman's ArmViewer extension. And this is really nice. Why? Because what this does, it will visualize your JSON extensions. And like, for instance, here I have a JSON ARM template deployment with a Web App on Linux and a SonarQube Azure SQL. And as you can see, it really nicely visualizes that it is using a security center, that it is using a SQL database, that it is using a web app, and that it is running on a Linux environment. So this can all be generated, and you can just export that and use this in your architecture drawings from there out. Really nice stuff. And it works on any kind of JSON file, as long as you can open it, and you can just say, I want to take a look at it from here out. Normally it takes a couple of minutes to show. Yeah, let's try it again. Just to show you that it works, and there we go. It will start visualizing it, it will render it, and then you have all the different inputs from there out. So really nice work done. Oh, this is weird. It's now responding to something which I did a half an hour ago. Sorry about that. So it will visualize the ARM templates in a very nice way, and it will really help you just like doing architecture in the correct way. So as I said, very nice extensions that you have. So thank you, Ben Coleman, for that one. Yeah, You can also use some additional workflow information. I'm just going to give this to you as an additional thing. You can use workspace in code and open workspace in VS Code and provision the Azure resource from your configure your code and just deploy to anything basically. So this will help you also to make up a better developer from yourself when you're doing CI/CD pipelines and all these things. This will really be helpful from that perspective. So that's about it. There's a useful link that I'm just going to share with you. VS Code can do that, which give you more tips and tricks on Visual Studio Code. I hope you enjoyed my session, and I do hope that your remainder of the DDD conference will be as happy and as fluently and as exciting as I think it will be. Okay, have a pleasant weekend. Happy holidays, stay safe, and thank you for joining on my session. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.